I want to make sure I articulate things that happen in real time based on literally thousands of money conversations I have every week. When people made difficult life decisions, namely transitioning into retirement, how to transition, how to pivot, how much, what's your lifestyle going to be? When they made those decisions, every single one of them, based on how they were raised in their childhood with money. Hey, this is Darryl Lyons, CEO and co-founder of Pax Financial Group, and I have an announcement to make, an exciting announcement. We are changing the podcast up. It will no longer be called Retire in Texas. It will be called Pivot with Darryl Lyons. And so the subtitle, by the way, is an important one, and one that I want to make sure that you understand. It's Wealth, Leadership, and Life. And so I want to unpack that, all of that a little bit more, because it's a big deal for you as a listener. You've been listening for a long time, many of you guys, and I see the trends in the listeners, and I get the feedback all the time. We've hardly marketed this podcast. It has been for our community. My initial inclination on the podcast was to, garner new clients. And then I recognized that our community really listened and almost depended on it. When I didn't have an episode that touched on certain topics, people in the community would ask me to touch on a topic. So then I recognized this isn't a platform for me to go out and get new clients. This is a platform for me to serve our existing community. And so thank you for that. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you for just the journey. Hey, go back and listen to this over 200 episodes now that we've done, which blows away most podcasts. Most podcasts last just a few episodes. And I just thank you, because if you look back, you can kind of listen to the journey of even my confidence on the microphone, going from shaky voice to now just a higher degree of confidence in what I do. And I appreciate it. The journey's been great. I've met so many people in the podcast community. We had an incredible production team backing us up. We had one out of Florida to launch. We switched from them to another company. And then this is our next iteration. We actually decided to go with a company in locally, because we took inventory of our vendors and said, we want to start working with people in our community. And so we switched to a firm here in the San Antonio, Bernie Hill Country area. So we're excited about this next chapter of production. But it's called Pivot. I mean, you would think, like, Darryl, what are you going to name your podcast? And it's Pivot. Makes sense if you've been listening long enough. Pivot with Darryl Lyons. And I still want to uncover a lot of areas of life that come to me in real time. So that's important for me to state. Sometimes the content that I distribute is a function of a situation that I ran into, and I want to keep it very real. There's been very, very difficult conversations that I've had to organize in a content that wasn't emotional. I've done podcasts on families stealing money from grandparents. The content was delivered in an unemotional way, but it was derived from a real conversation with a real life event. I've had conversations about how to handle money if your husband or wife dies, how to transition. The formatting was done in an unemotional way, but it comes from a very, very difficult conversation I had with a client or friend. Again, over 200 episodes. This is just real life stuff. And it's messy sometimes. It's just messy, because even then I might have a podcast episode that gives you direction on where the markets might go, and I'm totally off. I try not to prognosticate too much, but I'm an expert in my own opinion. I still want to continue to keep it real, meaning that I want to make sure I articulate things that happen in real time based on literally thousands of money conversations I have every week. Every week, money conversations, text, email, kneecap to kneecap, all the time. But it's not just money conversations. It's leadership, it's business, it's life. If you look at the original episodes that we did many of them were interviews with people. So we interviewed, famous people. We interviewed professors. We interviewed a lady who does baby cuddling, executives, widows. But what was interesting about all those episodes, if you go back and listen to them, the original ones, the original, where I was still shaky voice. This is what's interesting about them. They were all money conversations. They were all about pivoting into retirement. But here's what I think you might have missed. When people made, in every single episode, when people made difficult life decisions, namely transitioning into retirement, how to transition, how to pivot, how much, what's your lifestyle going to be, when they made those decisions, every single one of them, based on how they were raised in their childhood with money. Every single one. For example, I asked somebody, tell me about your decision to transition and pivot into retirement. Well, she says, I'm frugal and I want to make sure that we have enough money. So I want to be, conscientious about that. And I'm going to delay my retirement until I have that confidence. Well, where does that frugality come from? And you peel back the onion and it comes from being raised in a military family where they didn't have a lot of extra. Every single one of them. Every single one of these busy executives, these famous people, their money decisions were not rooted in some spreadsheet or some, this academic approach. They were rooted in the childhood decisions, how they were raised or not raised with money. That's how they made the biggest life decisions. And I think we have to take inventory of that and challenge that, because a lot of us have imperfect parents that were trying to figure it out along the way. I'm one of them. And so if we're always making money decisions based on the way our parents messed up in teaching us about money, which very few got that right, we've got to have a different framework in how we approach decision making in life in general, specifically with money, because we're going into life making money decisions that are often the deck stacked against us with consumerism, always fighting for our wallet through media messaging and headlines and constantly drips and putting the scent of apple pies in department stores. It's just an uphill battle for our wallets. And so for us to always default to our gut, which is just a byproduct of how we were raised, I want to deliver content that can give you some filters for decision making so you can navigate through that better and at least tilt the odds in your favor. So that's a big part of what I think about. And so again, it's, the three pillars of this podcast, so to speak, are, first of all, wealth. And I'm going to get into the markets. In fact, the next episode I'm going to get into, we're going to talk about specifically midterm elections. So make sure you listen to that one. And I'm going to talk about, different aspects of the market. But one of the things I want to do is I'm going to start interviewing people. So I'm going to add that as a feature, and how we do that, we're still working on, because I don't know if I want to do video yet. See, the thing about doing video is everyone's asked, hey, can you do more YouTube video content? Is just my time. I just want to be frank with you guys. I have 4 wonderful kids and a wife that I want to make sure that I have bandwidth. I'm really developing an incredible team at PAX, but if I can have the bandwidth, I'll be able to do some more content through video. But I'd love to interview some people, because there's some incredible people you need to meet. But I'm going to talk about markets. I'm going to talk about investing. I'm going to talk about that area of behavioral finance, retirement, economic trends, estate taxes, legacy, all of that. I'm gonna cover all of it, as you would imagine. I'm going to talk about, again, leadership. And so that would be the second pillar, leadership. So money, of course, and wealth, but also leadership. And leadership is such a nebulous term, but we generally all have a leadership role in some capacity. Could be with our family, or could be, you're running a business. But I do need to make sure that I provide some room in our conversation to be able to lead others. And often, in the Bible, it says where there is no vision, people perish. Often it begins with having a vision and casting a vision. And I find it really challenging for a lot of us to cast vision. I'm not saying I'm incredibly gifted at casting a vision. In fact, there's many times I'm flawed in that regard. I remember last year I was actually just praying, Lord, I'm struggling with vision right now. There's sometimes it's so clear to me, and then sometimes it's not. But when I've like I said, I've spoken to thousands of people. Sometimes there is no vision. Like, where are we going? And so want to help you cast a vision so that you can help others. And that's ultimately leadership, leading a team, leading a company, leading a family, navigating uncertainty, helping others navigate uncertainty, making difficult decisions, conflict resolution, just the challenges that exist in this time that we're here on this spinning ball in outer space. And then finally, of course, and this is all kind of together, but wealth, leadership, and then life. Just the reality is money is a tool for a lot of things, and the number one priority for all of us should be, and again, I say this with confidence, but for many of you guys, it'll just be an opinion, is recognizing that we have a creator, and that creator wants to have a unique relationship with us, and how do we do that in our everyday lives, and what does that look like? And there's Christianese that describe that. We hear about abiding, and we hear about righteousness and all of that stuff. And I want to try to kind of level set and talk to you in a way that you can, maybe you don't read the Bible. So I want to really, just kind of weave this practical application from somebody who enjoys reading the Bible. That's me personally. I love reading it, and then deliver it in such a way that it's not Christianese. And that's what I also do with the money part of it too. Very rarely do I use numbers. Very rarely, because just numbers and audio just don't mix. So it's like orange juice and toothpaste. So I want to make sure that I deliver the life part of it through a biblical worldview, but without overwhelming you in the Christianese context. Because again, it frankly, it's the most important thing. Who is our creator and what is his role in our lives? And then everything else overflows from that. And the Bible supports that idea that our creator is really the epicenter of our lives, and the conflict that we have is we somehow believe along this journey in life that we're the epicenter, and that belief starts when we're born. and we've got to unwind that our whole lives and realize that we're not the center of our own universe. And when we understand that, then we start to understand our money differently. We start to understand how life is more than just accumulation. But we've got to fight this message that comes out there that tells us whoever dies with the most toys wins. And that's what we're fighting against. That's what I'm fighting against for you. And so I'm trying to totally help reframe maybe even the childhood challenges you had with money and the messages you receive, and reset it towards a biblical worldview in such a way that you don't feel like it's overwhelmingly preachy or too much math. So that's a challenge that I have every time I do the podcast, but that's my MO. There's my MO. I want you to do me a favor. I don't ask for much from you guys, but if you could share this podcast with others going forward, I think there's a lot of people that could enjoy it. I think there's just a lot of confusion out there. I've never had more conviction in the podcast, in this message. And so I'm encouraged by this next chapter. I'm excited about the team that God has intentionally put around me. Gosh, if you could see the talent of the people that God's put around me, it's amazing. I'll share that with you sometime. Hopefully I can get them on the podcast. But I just want you to share it with others, tell others about it, and I'll continuing to deliver content. I would love to hear. I'll give you a platform. I'll give you more color on this later, but I would love to hear from you guys. So if there's questions that you want me to answer on this platform, I will, because I'm sure it'll benefit others. So be sure to ping me. Let me go ahead and give you my email. Do it that way. I may not be able to respond to all of them, but it's Darryl, Darryl, at paxfg.com. That's Paul Apple X-ray FG.com. So in future episodes, we're going to explore topics. Like I said, the next one's on midterms. So that's an interesting one. I want to talk about what the markets do during midterms. But I want to talk about, major life transitions, money and meaning, leadership lessons. I like history, so I'll weave history in there. Uncertainty, continue to talk about AI, legacy. You've heard me say a legacy is what you leave, or inheritance is what you leave to somebody. A legacy is what you leave in somebody. So we'll talk about that. Challenging assumptions. I'll continue to challenge assumptions, but this is all about you. And the word is pivot. Again, you've heard me say retirement is the disposition of an asset that's no longer useful. And that would assume that you're no longer useful. So I'd rather you pivot into the next chapter. And a basketball player, just being a Spurs fan, basketball players pivot. They have their one foot on the ground, and the other one kind of roams around and they have their basketball in their hands. But that one foot that's on the ground, that's anchored on the ground, that's anchored to your principles. That's what I think about pivoting when I think about you're going to pivot into this next chapter with principles, and that's what this podcast is all about. So this is the new announcement. It's no longer Retire in Texas. It's Pivot with Darryl Lyons, Wealth, Leadership, and Life. I'm super, super pumped about what I'm going to be delivering to you. And again, it's not just me. There's a whole group of people behind me that are supporting me, that are encouraging me, that are providing all the resources, technology, and I'm just so thankful for all of them. At some time I'll introduce you to all of them, but for now, you just have to trust me. It is not just me. There's plenty of people here. Thank you for listening. And as always, this won't change. You think different when you think long-term. Have a great day.